On the 28th of March 1999, here in Podjeva, Serbian military and police forces were on their 8th day of ethnic cleansing. 10,000 Albanians were driven out of their homes. Also on that day, members of the Borghezzi and Dorici families, mainly women and children, were gunned down in a garden in which they'd been sheltering. 5 children, Saranda, Johanna, Fatos, Gen and Liri, survived the atrocity, though seriously wounded. And it was British soldiers who evacuated them eventually to Manchester, where they received treatment for their wounds, both mental and physical. And it's thanks to the care that they received in Manchester that the children themselves created the idea to build the Manchester Peace Park here in their hometown of Podjeva.
People were evacuated and brought to Manchester, and that was a purely random thing. I think that governments all over the world, including even places like the States, Canada and Australia, were receiving Kosovars who could not come back because they had no homes and the country was very dangerous still, the landmine issue and that sort of thing. And in Manchester, because we've got very good medical facilities and there was housing that could be used, there was an agreement to bring people with very severe problems. So one of the families who was evacuated was a family of survivors of a massacre here in Podjeva, where 16 women and children had just been herded up by the Serb police and army into a garden and shot. 5 children were left for dead, but they actually weren't dead. They were taken actually by other Serbs, took them to a hospital, and that hospital had been commandeered by the Serb army. So they were then in a hospital for a few months, but they hung on to life. And then with the liberation they were found, and a British surgeon, David Vassallo, with the British Army, put details of their injuries on email. And it was actually the surgeons in Manchester who responded and said, we have got the skills to help these children.
Saranda and Johanna Borghezzi were brought to our hospital 3 months after they'd survived a massacre. They themselves were severely injured and needed specialist care, which we could not provide here in Kosovo. But what we could provide was a link in to England via email and digital camera, which we brought out with us in order to get specialist advice. And that's exactly what we did. There was no way, when I met them and heard their story, that we would just let them go. Yeah. There was just no way. Their story was too moving, and it was only right that we should help them as much as we could.
The situation in Kosovo is not something that just happened in the late 90s. In fact, it's been safe to say there's been tensions here for thousands of years. In fact, when you sort of look at the history of the area, it's a particularly troubled area indeed. There's just always been tensions between Christians and Muslims. In fact, it's safe to say I think it goes back to around 1 BC really. However, that's not the point of our trip here. The point here is about reconciliation and peace, and very much about moving on. That's right, isn't it, mate? You're moving on. You just like that radio mic, don't you?
Turn the phone.
Yeah, that's right.
The children asked us if we would make a peace park here, where the massacre happened in their hometown, to honour really all the people who suffered in the war in 1999.
So it's really the children's idea to fund.
We were in Scotland on holiday, and they were looking at the sort of beauty of Scotland, and they said, if only we could make our hometown more beautiful. It has got some lovely areas, but we know that they've all got spoilt by the war. And they asked us if we'd come out with them and have a look at Podjeva. And we thought we were possibly going to make a small park, in this kind of area. But when we came, we actually were offered 22 acres.
Also here for the dedication of the Peace Park are Manchester group The Travelling Band. They had a very important gig to prepare for that night at the Old Cinema in the centre of Podjeva. Meantime, I asked official band spokesman Joe Dudridge how they got involved.
Our friend Kelly had invited us to do this charity gig. Didn't know a lot about it, to be honest. And I got back and I hadn't been to bed. I had this horrific journey back from New York, and I was like, oh God. And I got back to Manchester in time, pretty much put my suitcase down, picked up my guitar and legged it down my street, which is Hilton Street in Manchester, turns into, crosses Oldham Street and it's Thomas Street. And I was basically in Cup, hadn't slept at all. And and everyone started laughing because I had a new haircut and stuff. So it was kind of nice, but it was surreal. And we did this gig, and it was really fun. You were there. You were.
Yeah, the charity auction. Yeah,
charity
I was there.
auction. We played acoustic, and it was a really great night, and a lot of money got raised. And I ended up getting quite drunk that night, and like most good things happening from getting drunk, I made a bid for something, and then I needed to pay for it. So I went back the next day and just started talking about the whole charity and everything about it. And Pam Dawes, who runs part of the arts and music side of the charity, she told me about the whole background, and it really touched me, the story of the two families and what happened to them 10 years ago. And it just really struck a note for me. And when she said that she wanted the travelling band to come out to Podievo for the dedication, it was just like, well, yeah, totally.
The Manchester contingent were certainly keeping themselves busy in town. I went just down the road to chat to Stephen Raw, who was working on a very special piece of artwork.
My first involvement with Mac was I had a sculpture in a Chorlton Arts Festival, and Pam and somebody from the Eden Project came up and they saw this sculpture, which was a poem on a golden column talking about the greenery of South Manchester and what an important lung it was for Manchester. And Pam got very excited about my use of language in the environment and making it visible and all that sort of stuff. And she told me about this park in a town I couldn't possibly pronounce, in a country I didn't really know about. I mean, I've been to Greece on holiday, and I've been to the former Yugoslavia and gone through it, and thought it was a bit of a fascinating country. But all my education about Kosovo has come entirely through Mac. Behind me here is the result of some workshops I did when I came out in October, and the invitation for that was simply to paint the word peace in any language that people chose and in any script. And so lots of them did Pace, P-A-Q-E, which is Albanian for peace, but then lots of them did all sorts of strange languages. We gave them ideas, and then some of them had their own. And then all that artwork has been photographed and collaged together, and has been printed as a huge banner, 11 metres long, which will practically cover this wall.
And it's going to go up on this. When are we going to get it unveiled then?
We have yet to buy the material. There's only 24 hours to go. Yet to buy the material.
I was going to say, you're running on schedule. Okay,
yeah.
You looked a bit worried then. That was all.
You can see the eave that's there, and we're devising a way that when the string is cut, the material falls to the ground, but we're going to help that by putting a few weights in at the bottom, because our fear is we're going to cut the string, or sorry, the mayor or whoever the celeb is who's going to cut the string, and the thing just stays there, and everyone's just looking at this grey bit of material. Instead, which is what is meant to happen, everybody is going to look at it in awe and wonder as suddenly this huge splash of colour is revealed.
Well, the artwork certainly sounds great, but was it just me, or did Stephen seem a little bit worried about that unveiling? Best leave him to get on with it. In part 2, we visit the Borghezzi and Dorici family memorials. I get a guided tour of town, and we take a trip to Pristina, the Kosovo capital, to hit the airwaves and meet a very important person.